Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something today that, well, I think we can all relate to.
Oh, yeah.
Conflict. And the big question,
Hmm.
how do we get to that, hopefully, reconciliation part?
Right.
Exactly.
Easier said than done.
So we've got some really fascinating insights to unpack today
Yeah.
from Michael Leadon's teachings at Unchained Disciples,
Oh, he's great.
specifically his series, Seeking Wholeness. Have you had a chance to?
Yeah, I've listened to a few of those
Oh, good.
really interesting stuff.
Yeah, so this is like multi-year, right?
Yeah.
This whole series?
It's been going on for a while.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the stuff on conflict and reconciliation really jumped out at me.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it.
It's a big deal.
How much conflict actually cost us?
Oh, it's not just the emotional toll, right?
Right.
There's a financial hit, too.
Like serious money, right?
Big time. In the U.S. alone, something like $24 billion every year just dealing with disputes.
War.
Yeah. In families and workplaces. Think about that.
Wow, that's a mountain of unresolved tension, right?
For sure.
And it makes you wonder, like, how much of that could be avoided if we had
Right.
better tools?
If we knew how to actually,
Do this whole reconciliation thing.
do it well.
Right.
It's a skill.
It is. And I think,
Like any skill, you can learn it.
yeah, and it's funny because Rick Warren actually said that mastering conflict resolution is the key to a successful marriage.
I can see that.
Right. So if it's that important for marriage,
Mm.
it's got to be pretty crucial
It's
for
really-
any relationship.
Yeah, you're dealing with people everywhere.
Yeah.
Work, family, friends.
Oh, neighbors.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right.
Yeah, so Leadon's approach, it's really refreshing. He's not just talking about patching things up on the surface. He's going deeper.
Okay. I like that. Going deeper.
He's really digging into what it means to be truly whole, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And reconciliation is a huge part of that journey.
Okay. So for those who haven't encountered his teachings, can you give us a little background? Who is
Yeah.
Michael Leadon and what's this seeking wholeness all about?
Sure. So Leadon's this instructor at Unchained Disciples. It's a bi-weekly Bible study, been going on for a while.
Okay. So this Seeking Wholeness series is part of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And it's really a multi-year exploration of, well, becoming our best selves, basically.
And how does he approach that?
He actually gets pretty specific, identifies like 37 different traits of wholeness.
Wow. 37. That's pretty comprehensive.
It is. And the cool thing is, these aren't just, vague ideas.
Right.
They're practical skills, things you can actually work on.
Right.
Setting boundaries, for one.
Okay. Boundaries. Important.
Yeah, huge. And managing your emotions,
That's a big one.
being authentic, really showing up as yourself. And of course, yeah, tackling conflict in a healthy way.
Which, let's be honest, is something most of us weren't exactly taught growing up.
Ex-
It's like, we were sold this idea of the Christian life being all joy and peace, but then no one handed us the instruction manual for
Right.
how to deal with the inevitable disagreements and hurt feelings. And
He's like, I skipped that part.
yeah, like, here's the promise, good luck figuring out the how-to.
Exactly. And that's
Man.
where Leadon really shines. He bridges that gap. He gives us those practical tools.
Okay, so how does he set the stage for this whole conflict resolution thing?
Well, he uses Matthew 18.15, that verse about if your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault just between the two of you.
Right, you have gained your brother.
Exactly. And it's interesting because he points out the point isn't to avoid conflict altogether.
Right.
It's to actually handle it in a way that strengthens the relationship.
That's a good distinction.
It's like, that Kenny Rogers song, The Gambler, know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em. That's great advice for poker and D for
Yeah,
conflict.
I love that analogy.
Right. But nobody gave us the instruction manual for that either.
Exactly. So we're kind of left to figure it out on our own,
Mm.
which often leads to
Yeah.
those $24 billion worth of disputes.
Exactly. And it's even more complicated because, as Leadon points out, different cultures view conflict in totally different ways.
That's so true.
Like, in some cultures, it's super rude to say no directly,
Right.
while others avoid confrontation entirely.
So just being aware of those nuances
Yeah, can save you a lot of grief.
can make a huge difference
Totally.
in how those interactions play out.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so let's get to the heart of it. What's at the core of these conflicts, these clashes that cost us so much?
Well, Leadon breaks it down into three main roots.
Okay, let's hear them.
All right, so first you've got limited resources.
Okay, so that's like
Think time.
time, money,
possessions.
All that good stuff. Not enough to go around.
Always fighting over the last slice of pizza.
Exactly. Then you've got unmet needs and expectations.
Ah, yes, those unspoken expectations.
Right, and those can be physical, emotional, even spiritual.
Like feeling unloved or unsupported.
Exactly. Or like not having your spiritual needs met by your church community, something like that.
Right, right.
And then lastly, you've got those pesky differing values.
Oh, those are always fun.
Always a recipe for conflict, right? Like what you value might be totally different from what someone else values.
And those shoulds we throw around are a dead giveaway for our values.
I say, yeah, totally. Like they should be home by now.
Or everyone should contribute equally.
Right. Those statements reveal what we prioritize, but it might not match up with what others prioritize.
Okay, so we've got these three sources of conflict brewing, limited resources, unmet needs, and clashing values. What do we do with that mess?
Well, Leadon says we need to bring in this, it's almost like a balancing act.
Okay.
A mix of emotions, logic, and empathy.
So it's not just about being all touchy-feely or all head in the sand.
No, it's about integrating all three. So emotions, those are actually signals, you know?
Yeah.
They're telling us what matters to us, what needs to change. But then logic comes in, helps us pinpoint like the root of the problem and come up with actual solutions.
Okay, so emotion shows what's wrong. Logic helps us fix it.
Exactly. And then empathy, that's what allows us to see the situation through the other person's eyes.
Which is so hard to do.
It is.
When you're all caught up in your own perspective.
Oh, yeah. It's like when we're in conflict, we forget that the other person's feelings and perceptions are just as real as the actual conflict itself.
It's like we want to be right more than we want to understand.
Yeah, and Leadon talks about this thing called the false peacemaker.
Oh, what's that?
It's basically someone who avoids conflict not because they actually want to resolve it, but because they're scared.
So it's peacemaking out of fear, not out of love.
Exactly. And he gives these really relatable examples, like think about giving your spouse the silent treatment.
Oh, classic.
Instead of actually talking about their,
their lateness or whatever's bugging you.
Right, their whatever it is, or saying yes to a proposal.
Wow.
Because you're too scared to have a difficult conversation. Or even like avoiding those tough talks about, someone's
Destructive behavior.
Yeah, because they've had a hard life, so you feel bad.
Oh, that's so common though, right?
Yeah.
Sweeping things under the rug.
It is, but it doesn't actually work. It just delays the explosion.
So how do we move from that avoidance to actual peacemaking?
Well, that's what we're going to dig into next.
Okay, I'm ready for some practical steps here.
You got it. Stay tuned, folks. We're just getting started. So first thing Leadon emphasizes is that conflicts, they rarely get resolved by accident.
Right, they just keep simmering.
It takes intentionality.
So being willing to make that first move, right?
Make the first move. Initiate that conversation.
I mean, he brings up that research about first impressions, the first 3 minutes
of the
conversation.
Make or break it.
So starting with affirmation, being respectful,
Sets the tone.
Sets the tone.
Huge.
Okay, so we made that first move.
Okay.
We're being respectful. But then comes the tricky part, right?
Yeah.
Actually expressing our concerns.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how do we do that without it blowing up?
Well, he suggests focusing on, like, feelings and specific behaviors, not diving into motives.
Right, so
Don't try to be a mind reader.
Not that you always and you never.
Exactly. Those sweeping generalizations, they just make people defensive.
Right.
So instead of saying, like, you never do anything around here, try something like,
give me an example.
Hey, you said you would take out the trash, and you didn't. This makes me feel stressed.
Okay.
Because I have a lot to do, and it makes me feel like I can't rely on you.
Oh, that's much clearer, right.
Right. You're stating the behavior, your feelings about it, and what you need.
Without,
without attacking them.
Attacking your character.
Exactly. It's a 3-step formula.
Okay, I like formulas.
Express what you noticed, share your feelings about it, and state your need. What do you need them to do differently?
That's good. And it makes me think of that proverb, the words of the reckless pierce like swords.
Ooh, yes.
But the tongue of the wise brings healing.
Powerful imagery, right.
It is.
Reminds us to use our words carefully, especially during conflict.
We can do a lot of damage.
We can.
With our words.
We really can.
Yeah, and we need to be truthful, but also loving.
Truth and love.
Right. It's not just
about
out. blurting out whatever pops into our heads.
Right, because even if we think it's the truth,
Right.
if it's not delivered with love,
It's just going to cause more hurt.
yeah, it's going to make things worse.
Yeah.
And that's not helpful.
Not helpful at all.
Mm.
And speaking of choosing our words wisely, there's that other proverb, a patient man has great understanding, but a quick-tempered man promotes folly.
Oh, that's so good. Being slow to anger, not sweating the small stuff.
Right. Choosing your battles.
Yeah, and when those conflicts do arise, giving yourself that time to cool down.
To cool down, to think clearly.
Before you engage.
So important.
It really is. 'Cause otherwise you're just reacting, and
Right.
that never ends well.
And then, along with being slow to speak, Leadon also talks about really listening.
Oh.
He quotes Proverbs 18.13, one who gives an answer before he hears, it is foolishness and shame to him.
Oh, I've been guilty of that one.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Oh.
But that active listening,
Yeah.
it's so crucial, right?
It's QTE.
It's not just hearing the words.
It's really taking them in.
Yeah, reflecting back what you've heard.
Paraphrasing, making sure you understand.
Using those validating phrases.
Yeah, like, that makes sense. Or, I can see why you feel that way. Or, that's a good point.
It's showing them that you're really engaged, not just waiting for your turn to speak.
Right, because people are much more likely to be open to what you have to say if they feel like they've been heard.
Yeah, that makes sense. But what about those times when emotions are running high?
Oh, yeah.
It feels
all
like
the time.
logic goes out the window and everyone's just reacting.
Fight or flight.
Right.
Leadon talks about the amygdala, that part of the brain that processes emotions.
Yeah.
It goes into overdrive. Like, it thinks we're facing a real threat.
So we're in survival mode.
Yeah,
Not exactly conducive to rational conversation.
not at all. So that's why it's so important to, pause.
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath.
Maybe count to 10.
Yeah, and try to see things
From their perspective.
from their perspective. Yeah.
Even if it seems crazy to us.
Even if it seems crazy, because to them, it's very real.
Okay. So we're pausing, we're breathing, we're trying to understand. What are they misunderstanding in that emotional state?
Exactly, because how are their emotions coloring their perception?
Instead of just reacting to their reaction.
Reacting to the react.
Right.
Yeah.
We step back, we try to understand what's driving it.
And that understanding, it can really help de-escalate the situation.
Right. Bring things back down to earth.
And get you back on track to finding a solution.
Okay, so speaking of solutions, Leadon really emphasizes the importance of a win-win mindset.
Oh, yeah.
He even quotes Philippians 2.4.
Well, do not merely look out for your own personal interests.
But also for the interests of others.
It's not about one person winning and the other one losing.
Right. It's not a competition.
It's about finding solutions that benefit both parties.
Whenever possible.
Whenever possible.
It's about collaboration.
Exactly.
Not competition.
Right. It's about working together to find a solution that addresses
Everyone's needs.
everyone's needs and concerns.
I like that. Working together. But then there's this other element Leadon talks about, the elephants in the room.
Oh, yeah.
Those uncomfortable truths that need to be spoken, even if it feels
Risky.
or even unkind, right?
Yeah.
But he suggests that sometimes avoiding those conversations
Does more harm?
does more harm than good, yeah.
Long run.
It's like ignoring a wound that just keeps festering.
Exactly. And it takes courage.
It does.
But speaking that, those truths can actually lead to
A stronger relationship.
a stronger, healthier relationship in the end.
And he uses this powerful passage from the Bible to illustrate this.
Yeah.
Matthew 5.21-24.
Leave your gift at the altar.
That's the one, right?
Yeah.
But it's really about dealing with anger and its consequences.
Yeah, and it's important to remember the context here.
Okay.
So this was part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount,
Right.
and he was setting a higher standard
Better than the...
Old Testament law.
Okay, interesting.
He wasn't just condemning the act of murder, he was going deeper.
He was going after the root.
The anger, the intent behind it.
So not just the action, but the attitude.
Exactly. And it's radical because he told his followers to prioritize reconciliation with each other,
Oh.
even over religious rituals.
Wow.
That's how seriously he took healthy relationships.
That's powerful.
And that imagery of the altar, it's so striking, right? Because in Jesus' time,
Yeah.
that's where people made sacrifices for forgiveness of sins.
So it's like,
He said,
stop trying to be right with God.
when you're not right with your brother,
Exactly.
that's good. I like that. And it's not just a one-time fix, right?
This is ongoing.
Leadon stresses that if we realize someone has something against us, We need to
Make it right.
initiate reconciliation.
We can't wait for them to come to us.
Right, take responsibility.
Exactly.
And he even shared that story about Francis Chan,
Oh, I love that story.
the pastor who gave a reverse altar call during a sermon on this passage.
He asked anyone who needed to reconcile with someone to stand up and leave the service.
To go DOIT.
To go do it.
Wow. And a third of the congregation walked out.
That's bold.
It is, but it shows the urgency, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not something to be taken lightly.
It's about those relationships, putting them front and center, making it right.
Taking those concrete steps.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's clarify the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation.
Okay.
Because Leadon explains that forgiveness is erasing the debt, while reconciliation is restoring the relationship.
And those aren't always the same thing.
Right, they're not.
Like, we're always called to forgive,
Okay.
but reconciliation isn't always possible
Okay.
or even wise. Like, forgiving an abuser doesn't mean you should let them back into your life.
Okay, that's a good distinction. So forgiveness is more about,
It's an internal process.
it's letting go of
letting go of that hurt.
the hurt and the resentment.
The resentment, yeah.
Right.
It's a decision to release any expectation of repayment.
No money, no explanation, no apology, not even gratitude.
If your forgiveness has conditions,
It's not really forgiveness.
it's not
It's a conditional pardon.
right.
Okay, I like that. So what about those situations where reconciliation, the IS, possible? What are the steps?
Okay, so Leadon gives us some really practical guidelines here.
Okay, lay it on me.
First and foremost, you've got to start by asking God for wisdom.
Right. James 1.5. If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God.
There it is.
Prayer, such a powerful tool
Especially in those messy relational situations.
when we don't know what to do.
Exactly.
Okay, so pray first.
Pray first. Then focus on reconciliation, not resolution.
Okay, what's the difference?
You don't have to agree on everything to have a peaceful relationship.
Right, you can agree to disagree.
You can agree to disagree. You gotta-
Respectfully.
Respectfully, yeah.
Okay, so reconciliation over resolution.
And that's where empathy comes in again.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to see things from their point of view,
Even if
even if we don't share it.
we don't agree
Acknowledging that their perspective is valid
to them.
to them. Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Validation is key.
It can go a long way.
Okay, what else?
Take responsibility.
Oh, yeah, for our part.
For our part, even if it feels small.
Right, even if we're like 99% sure,
Yeah, 1% our fault.
we were 1%
We
wrong.
own that 1%.
Why is that so
It
important?
fosters humility,
Humility.
openness, and that makes reconciliation much more likely.
It's modeling the behavior we want to see, right?
Exactly.
We mess up, we own it.
We own it.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
We're human.
We are.
Okay, so timing, that's a big one,
Right.
right?
Timing is everything.
Leadon says to choose a time that's conducive to a productive dialogue.
Yeah, don't try to have a serious conversation when they're hangry or tired or
Stressed, dressed, or distracted.
Right, so be mindful of their state of mind.
Absolutely.
And what about public confrontations?
Oh, no, avoid those. Like the plague.
Okay, so private.
Bit respectful setting.
Okay, got it. And remember that proverb about reckless words piercing like swords?
Oh, yeah.
Leadon reinforces that by quoting Proverbs 18.19, a brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city.
Yes.
And quarrels are like the bars of a citadel.
Oh, powerful words.
It is. It's like, be careful with your words. Yeah.
Don't make things worse.
And Proverbs 15.1 adds to that, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger.
It's about the tone, right?
Yeah, the tone.
The approach.
The approach.
We can say the same words, but
Mhm.
how we say them makes all the difference.
Huge difference.
Okay, so be mindful of our tone, our words, our timing.
And be aware of those common triggers for anger and offense.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Feeling unheard,
Okay.
abused, slighted, embarrassed, disrespected.
Ignored, devalued.
All of those things.
Yeah, those are all valid.
They can really trigger that fight or flight response.
And then logic goes out the window again.
Exactly.
So how do we deal with those triggers?
Leadon offers another proverb, Proverbs 18.2. A fool does not delight in understanding, but in revealing his own mind.
Oh, that's a good one.
He encourages us to seek understanding
Of course.
before trying to be understood.
So it's not about being right.
It's about empathy.
It's about really trying to grasp their perspective.
Yeah, putting ourselves in their shoes.
Even if it's hard.
Even if we don't like what we see.
Even if we don't like what we see.
Okay, and Leadon also talks about emotional intelligence.
Oh, yeah, that's huge.
What is the other person really feeling?
Right. Are their words masking?
Masking something deeper.
Yeah, like pride, insecurity, feeling threatened.
Right, like maybe they're worried about their status, their reputation, their beliefs.
Right, and don't dismiss their fears or feelings as irrational.
Right, because to
To
them...
them, they're very real.
Okay, so how do we respond when someone's triggered, when those deeper emotions are bubbling up?
Well, Leadon encourages a selfless attitude.
Okay.
He quotes Philippians 2.35.
Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility, consider one another as more important than yourselves.
Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus.
That's that Christ-like love, right?
Selfless, sacrificial, other-centered,
Putting the needs of others before our own.
even when it's hard. And this isn't just some abstract concept.
This is practical.
It's
So
practical.
it can transform our relationships.
So when we approach those interactions with a selfless heart, we're more likely to be patient,
Patient, understanding, forgiving.
which creates a much more harmonious and loving environment.
Not everyone.
Okay, so how does all of this connect back to our relationship with God?
Well, Leadon uses 2 Corinthians 5.17-20 as a guide here.
Okay.
This passage is all about the ministry of reconciliation,
Okay.
explaining that God took the first step to reconcile with us,
Even though
even though we were the offender.
we messed up.
Yeah, big time.
Our sin created that separation,
That chasm.
but he bridged that gap out of love.
Out of his love for us,
And now we're called to be ambassadors of reconciliation,
sharing that message with others.
extending grace in our own relationship,
It's reflecting God's love
Yeah.
and forgiveness.
in our interactions with
Okay,
everyone.
we encounter.
And Leadon ends by saying, our reconciliation with others
Yeah.
is a testament to our relationship with God.
It's a tangible expression of his grace working in and through us.
And it's an ongoing process,
It is. It's a journey.
a journey that requires humility, intentionality, and a willingness to extend forgiveness and grace, even when it's tough.
Even when it's really tough.
Okay, so big question here. What about those situations where the other person isn't on board?
Ooh.
They're resistant to reconciliation,
Yeah.
maybe even hostile.
That's the million-dollar question, right?
It is, because it's one thing to talk about reconciliation when everyone's willing,
Right.
but what happens when you hit that wall?
Yeah, when you pour your heart out, you try to make things right.
And they're just not interested.
Yeah.
What do we do then?
Well, first, it's crucial to remember we can't force reconciliation.
Right.
It takes two.
Two willing participants.
We can offer the olive branch.
But we can't make them take it?
Exactly. Our responsibility is to make a sincere effort,
Responsible.
do our part.
But ultimately,
Yeah.
the other person has the freedom to
To choose
choose how they respond,
how they respond, yeah.
which can be a bitter pill to swallow,
Oh, yeah.
especially when it's someone you deeply care about.
It's like rejection.
It is. It feels like rejection.
It can be so painful. But even when reconciliation isn't possible,
Okay.
there is still power in forgiveness.
So you're saying even if the relationship isn't restored,
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness is still crucial?
It's a gift, you know?
A gift for who?
Yeah.
For them or for us?
It's a gift you give yourself.
Okay, so it's more for our benefit than theirs.
In a way, yeah.
How so?
Because holding on to that bitterness, the resentment, that only hurts us.
It's like drinking poison
It-
and expecting the other person to die
Exactly. Forgiveness sets us free from that.
from that toxic grip,
Yeah, it's choosing to let go of the hurt, even if they never apologize.
even if they never acknowledge they did anything wrong.
Doesn't matter.
But doesn't that let them off the hook?
Not necessarily.
How so?
Forgiveness doesn't mean you're condoning what they did
Right.
or minimizing it. It simply means you're not letting it control you anymore.
So we're shifting the focus
Yeah,
from their actions to our own healing.
exactly.
Okay, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
We reclaim our power,
You reclaim your power.
even if the relationship isn't what we want it to be.
Exactly. It's saying, you hurt me, but you don't define me.
Powerful.
I'm choosing to let go and move forward.
I love that. But what about those situations where you have to interact with the person?
Oh, yeah.
Even though reconciliation, like, it's off the table. Think a difficult coworker or a family member who just brings the drama.
Boundaries.
Boundaries, that's what we need.
Crucial.
Okay, so let's unpack that.
Okay.
What do healthy boundaries look like in those situations?
It starts with being clear about what you're not okay with.
Okay, so knowing our limits.
Knowing your limits. What are your non-negotiables?
And then communicating those clearly.
communicating them clearly, yeah. And remember, boundaries, they're not about controlling the other person.
Right.
It's about protecting yourself.
So it's saying,
I respect you, but I also respect myself, and this is where I draw the line.
and those boundaries, they might look different depending on the relationship, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like with a coworker, maybe you keep it strictly work-related.
Yeah, just professional.
Right, with a family member, maybe it's skipping certain
Having
conversations
vents.
that you know are going to lead to conflict.
Right, those ones that
Always
those are-
end in fireworks.
Exactly. You know those ones?
Yeah, and it's okay to say no,
It
right?
is. You don't have to over-explain.
You don't have to justify.
Nope, state it clearly, firmly, and that's enough.
But what if they push back?
Oh, they will.
The guilt trips, the manipulation, all that fun stuff.
That's when standing firm is so important.
Even if it means upsetting them.
Even if it means upsetting them, yeah. Because you have the right to protect yourself.
So well-being over people-pleasing, no matter how much they lay it on thick.
It's not selfish, it's self-care.
Right.
You can't pour from an empty cup.
Okay, I like that. So boundaries are like our oxygen mask.
They let you breathe.
They let us breathe, function, be our best selves.
Even in tough situations.
Okay, so how do we have those boundary conversations without sounding harsh or judgmental?
Remember, you're not attacking them. You're setting limits on their behavior.
Okay, so focus on the actions, not the person.
Exactly. So instead of, you're always so negative. It's
Yeah.
more like, I find it draining to be around negativity, so I'm going to step away from this conversation.
Oh, I like that.
Clear, firm, not a personal attack.
And then you follow through. Right.
Follow through with an action.
Actions speak louder than words.
They do.
Okay, but what about when the other person is truly toxic?
Mm.
Harmful, even.
Yeah.
Like in an abusive relationship or with a manipulative friend.
Those situations might require distancing yourself completely, at least for a time.
Wow, that's hard.
It is.
Especially when there's history.
Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do.
For both of you.
For both of you. It creates space for healing, and who knows, it might even motivate them to seek help.
Right, so recognizing that we can't fix people.
We can't fix them.
We can only control our own choices.
Your own choices, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about forgiveness, boundaries, even walking away.
Mm-hmm.
But what about that initial question of reconciliation?
Yeah.
With someone who's resistant? Is there any hope there?
It's definitely more challenging,
Okay,
but not impossible.
so what does that look like?
It takes a lot of patience, grace, and meeting them where they are.
So understanding their resistance.
Yeah, what's driving it? Fear, hurt. Maybe they're wrestling with guilt or shame.
Yeah.
We got to get curious about their perspective.
Okay, so how do we uncover those deeper motivations?
Empathy.
Empathy again.
Put yourself in their shoes. Really listen without judgment. Ask open-ended questions. Validate their feelings, even if you don't agree with their actions.
So creating that safe space for them to open up.
Exactly. It's not about convincing them they're wrong. It's about understanding their experience. And that validation, it can be the bridge to rebuilding trust.
But what if they just won't even have the conversation?
Sometimes the best we can do is pray for them. Release them to God's care. Trust that He's working in their heart, even if we can't see it.
Surrender control, let go of the outcome.
Yeah. We can't force reconciliation, but we can trust that God is bigger than our circumstances. He specializes in bringing broken things back together.
That's comforting. So even when it feels hopeless, there's still hope.
Absolutely. God is a God of reconciliation, and He can use our willingness to forgive, to set boundaries, to love unconditionally,
Yeah.
to plant those seeds of healing, even in the toughest situations.
This has been so insightful, really. It feels like we've explored the whole spectrum, you know?
Yeah, the whole mess.
From that initial conflict to hopefully reconciliation and everything in between. So what's the key takeaway? For our listeners who are wrestling with these issues in their own relationships.
You are not alone. Everyone struggles in relationships. We all make mistakes. We all get hurt. But there's hope, there's healing, and there's grace. And that grace, it's not just for the other person, it's for you too.
We need to show ourselves that same compassion
We do.
that we're trying to show others.
Absolutely. We're all works in progress on this journey together.
And it's okay to ask for help, right?
Oh, please do.
A trusted friend, family member, therapist, pastor.
Don't go through this alone.
There's strength in reaching out.
There is.
And remember, God is with you every step of the way.
He is.
He loves you unconditionally, and He wants to see you thrive in your relationships.
No, it's beautifully said.
So to wrap up our deep dive into reconciliation, let's remember this. It's messy, it's challenging, but it's worth it.
It is.
Seek understanding, extend grace, and trust in God's power to heal, even when things feel broken beyond repair.
And remember, you've got support. You've got resources.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Always good to be here.
Until next time, keep seeking wholeness, keep extending grace, and keep exploring the depths of life and faith.
See you next time, everyone.